Um, so The Last Dance, you and I have been watching every episode. We've been meeting afterwards on Zoom and talking about this series. What have you enjoyed about this? Because I think from episode one we were like, this is awesome.
I think it's very honest, and it doesn't cut corners, and and so far it's covered it's covered like the key moments in Jordan's career. Um and what I like about it is it hasn't tried to make him look like a perfect person,
Yeah.
which I was worried about. Like I was worried about them being like, "Hey, it's Michael Jordan, like he's this great player," and yeah, but no, like they haven't done that.
I think one of the things that surprised me the most throughout this documentary is how each episode is kind of like a different player, right? Like episode 2 was Scotty, episode 3 was Dennis Rodman and his vacation craziness, and like it's about that entire team almost.
Yeah.
Not just a Michael Jordan documentary, even though it clearly is fronted by Michael and there's a lot of Michael stuff in
And
there.
then yeah, and
As
then
a
episode 4 was Phil Jackson.
Right. It's like they have a lot more of a profile piece on each of these individuals, and they're going to continue to do that. Episode 5, I think, episode
The
5 and 6,
Dream Team.
the Dream Team. I am really interested to see what was the conversation between Michael Jordan and the USA basketball organization about Isaiah Thomas and why he wasn't on the team.
Well, it was probably the men's team tried to kill me.
Yeah, I get
Like
that.
after watching episode 4, like I'm betting you Michael Jordan, they're gonna ask him. He's like, I don't want him on the team. The freaking Detroit Pistons tried to murder me.
Yo, I want to hear more details about what was actually said in the room,
Yeah.
how it was presented. I'm just so interested with that. And obviously, I love the Dream Team. I watched a documentary on the Dream Team that NBA TV did like years ago. That's such an awesome team, just personality wise. I'm just excited to see more about that. But I think you and I both have been frustrated with Jerry Krause and his sort of willingness to blow up the team after the 5th championship and all this stuff. How have you felt about how they've painted Jerry Krause as the
Um,
GM over the last couple of years of
I
that?
think I told you this last time I talked about this, but I think it's unfortunate that they weren't able to that he wasn't still alive to be able to defend himself.
I agree.
Um, I do believe the um just the way like the editing has kind of led us to be like, he's terrible, and like, yeah, tearing apart the team was, like at
It's
the time it seemed a little like early, but I've also heard apparently that in an interview from the director that as it goes down the line in the they're doing they did the episodes in the order for a reason, because as it goes down the line, as you see them start getting closer and closer to the end of the season, you kind of start understanding a little bit more and more about why
Why Krause
things
felt that.
happened the way they did.
Yeah.
Because that team was, let's be honest, that team was full of big characters.
Oh, absolutely. Dennis Rodman
And
is a prime example. The 82-hour vacation instead of
yeah, and I think also I just people say that they could have won it again. You have to think about it this way. They were essentially playing back to back to back to back to back seasons, having won like all those championships. They
right.
didn't have as many time off. There was an interview I read with the guard from that team who,
Kerr,
yeah, no,
Kerr, who coach?
I
I
think so. The guy with the mustache with
Yeah.
the weird, yeah. He said pretty much everybody on that team at one point during that run had Osgood Slatter's had just like feet problems.
Oh my goodness.
because they were like going through shoes like every game.
I know.
And like it's very interesting because what I also love about the editing is even though each episode may be focused on a different person, the ending always connects to the end. The beginning of an episode connects to the end of the last episode, and each ending, like the last 5 or 10 minutes of each episode, always kind of like keeps you hanging around because you want to know more.
Right.
And like the way it ended, like I love the way the last episode ended with them leaving the game between the Super Bowl between Denver and I forget who it was, but they like then flew to Salt Lake City.
Oh, Denver and Washington.
Yeah, Denver and Washington. You see them on the plane and they like fly to. It's like, oh, it's all jovial, and you're like, oh, this is so nice. But then they land in Salt Lake City, and it's like, bam, the jarring reality of like Phil Jackson was done. Like they had the audio story being the news story being played over the shot of the bus pulling in to say like he's once again made it very clear that Phil Jackson will be leaving. And it's like I was just sitting there and I'm like, I still don't get this decision. Like, you know, you're losing Michael Jordan if you
Yeah.
like if you let Phil Jackson leave. Like he's made it very clear he's not playing for anybody else.
That was
So,
also bizarre.
did he hate Michael Jordan? Is that his? Did he want to get? I'm starting to wonder if part of it is he wanted to get Michael Jordan's contract off the books.
I don't know, but I also think you're right. Is that we're going to see more about why Krause had that feeling as we go along. But I think what you said is clear about like the ending keeps you hanging from like the whole Scottie Pippen trade thing.
Yeah.
I was like, what? And then they just said, oh, he kind of regretted it and just said, I want to continue on and all this stuff. But I mean, I think speaking to how they're editing it is so interesting because I think a lot of people don't focus on the storylines as we do, but also think about how it's edited, how it's presented, how each interview connects to a certain piece of it. Those are the pieces that I think people should be watching more in this documentary than just talking about, oh, the actual what's happening. How is it actually being presented, I think, is the more interesting part about this if you're looking at it from a documentary filmmaking perspective.
It's funny because literally right after the first 2 episodes ended, people were on Twitter being like, this is edited so poorly. It's so weird. Like, I hate the style. Like, what are they doing? They're jumping around. I'm like, yeah, because this is a huge story they're telling.
Yeah.
It's not what I realized that the directors realize is it's not just about one player. It's about the story of the Bulls, all the stuff that happened to lead up to each of these players being on this team. It's a reason it's not called the Michael Jordan story. There's a reason it's called
The
Last Dance because it's about the team.
Right.
Like, and people who don't realize that, and I think you and I get it because we're communications majors and that's just how we think.
Right.
But I loved it because I'm sitting here, I'm like, it's smart because right when you and it's done, like you only ever get the flash backwards moments when it needs to be done. Because like you'll get to a point in the story where it's like sort of like all right, we need to go backwards a little bit to explain this.
Yeah. And they even go backwards as far as to say, all right, here's this player, right? Let's say Scottie Pippen's a perfect example. Scottie, they're like, all right, here's Scottie during this period. Here's him going back to his childhood, then him getting drafted, and then the Sonics thing, which I don't think any fans actually know about, and that whole story, and then kind of going back. So the reason why they're jumping back and forth is to give you this really important context that makes the story more compelling, honestly.
Because like what I've loved is it's like there's two stories going on kind of with Mike with the team for the last couple episodes where it was like showing the battle with the Pistons, not the Pistons, was it the Pistons, Detroit?
Yeah.
Yeah, with the Pistons, showing the battle with the Pistons
Bad
And
Boy.
to me, what that showed me, the narrative that was being added from that is, oh, this was when Michael Jordan went, like, we got to get tough, we got to be harder, we got to fight. Like, we
We
can't
gotta
just
work
be
out more. We gotta do
like,
right.
yeah,
Like,
we can't be just good on our own skills. Like, like, we have to get tough.
meet their own physicality.
And so then they go out there and they tell this story about how they were able to finally, like, they didn't get it done the next year, they didn't get it done the year after, but finally they got it done.
Right.
And then you have the whole story with, like, the whole narrative about them not shaking hands and yada yada yada.
Which a lot of people have focused on, right?
Right. And then it continues the narrative of, like, like, the Michael Jordan never was able to get it done. Like, he couldn't win. He was good, but he was selfish. He couldn't then. But then they show them when they get to the finals and they finally do it, and it's against one of the greats in Magic Johnson,
Right.
and he does it, and you see this emotion, which a lot of people on Twitter were like, wow. Like, people who even played against Michael Jordan and played with Michael Jordan were saying things on Twitter like, I played with him for a long time, and I never saw him with that emotion. Like,
Right.
I think those are the moments of having a camera there.
Right.
Really was amazing.
I think we have both lived through LeBron James's career. We have both lived through the Warriors dynasty. And there's so many interesting thought processes for me about, I remember LeBron with the Cavs, and they're like, oh my God, he can't get it done, and he's not that good of a player, and this and that. And it kind of reminds me of Michael about how they were like, he's just a showman, and he can't win the thing. And then, because all that people remember about Michael, and the reason why everyone says he's the greatest of all time is they just say 6 rings, right? 6 rings. But what's the story to get him to those 6 rings? How did the media look at Michael Jordan in this period? They looked at him as just one of the greatest basically like the shows on the court.
Yeah.
And not, going to the show on turf thing. But
yeah. And it was genius because then you get the moment, for me, the moment that story shifted into the next phase of Michael Jordan's career and it was so subtle, but it was just a little like, and it was just like a little conversation part during when they were in Game 7 against the Lakers, where they just have they have MJ just being interviewed, and he just goes, and coach just goes, who's open? And he's like, so and so, and it's like, we'll pass it to him. And so it showed the moment where he realized, like, he finally clicked on what Phil Jackson had been trying to put in his head. And from then on, I believe that's the moment that he became the greatest player of all time, because you know what he does that I don't believe LeBron James does? He passes.
Well,
like,
I think LeBron is one of the
dishes the rock. And I honestly, and this is going to probably give me a lot of hate, but I feel like LeBron James is a lot more selfish of a player than Michael Jordan ever was.
I don't know, because I think especially this year, leading the league in assists, he's kind of trying to help the team with chemistry. This might be the first year where he really kind of was like, I want to help the entire
team. A little late for that, though.
But I also will say this. I think what people said about the documentary, people have watched it like before us, like some early cuts.
Yeah.
And people are like, okay, this story will get people to realize, oh, this guy was the greatest of all time. And the more you watch it, the more you realize why this is so hard to argue. Because you're like, remember the first episode, the first night of the 2 episodes, Larry Bird's like, I've never seen anything like it. The 53 points and all that stuff. Like, I think part of that is the genius of the documentary. And as we go along, more people, I think, are going to be like, oh, this is why. Because we never lived through it, right?
Yeah.
So we are able to sort of live through it in a way where we're going to start to sort of understand why.
And it's building it up, and it's showing. Right. And to me, the moments that started making me think like, wow, this guy maybe really might have been the greatest of all time is not just what he did on the court, but the fact that he was understanding of his teammates. He did what needed to be done. Like, he just wanted to win. And he didn't care if he had to go to friggin' Dennis Rodman's hotel room and get him and bring him to friggin'
Practice.
practice. Or you could see it was funny because you could see that even all these years later when he was being taught, they were talking about the Vegas thing. You could see the look in his eyes of just like, oh my god, like
I knew it. Right? Michael's
yeah. He's like, I knew you were gonna like just like this dude, like.
Final thing on this before I let you go and we finish the podcast. I want to talk about the vacation thing because this is by far my favorite moment of the entire show so far. The fact that Phil Jackson knows his players that well to say, yeah, go. And Michael's like, no.
Yeah.
No. And they're like, give him 48 hours. And then Michael's like, all right, fine.
I love the line at the beginning of the next episode where the interviewer just nonchalantly goes, was he back in 48 hours? Michael goes, no. No, what do you think? It's just it's so well done. And honestly, to think that originally we were gonna have to wait till like September for it.
We were gonna have to wait till June. It was gonna be released during the finals.
Oh man, that would have been cool though. Like think about how like the moments around that, like having it in the finals and.
Yeah, but. I will say. So back to the vacation thing. He's like partying, and then Michael like has to pick him up. But it's like the genius of Phil Jackson to go, I know what this guy needs. He's so crazy, but I know he needs time off. And then to think about, oh my God, what if that happened today with social media?
Oh, the media would kill him.
Oh my God.
Think about TMZ being like, oh my God, Dennis Rodman in Las Vegas. The heck?
Yeah. But I think you and me both have really enjoyed it, and also you and I have also tried to understand it deeper from a technical perspective, as you said, as communication manager, maybe say, hey, here's what's actually going on, and here's what's the genius of them telling the story than just the story themselves.
Yeah.